Free agency is here, and everyone is talking about the big names, but it's time we give some love to the guys who have slipped under the radar. Today, we're talking about the 10 MLB free agents you might have forgotten about in the midst of all the free agency buzz. Players that could be some of the best value signings of the offseason. To kick things off, we have Ryan O'Hearn, formerly of the San Diego Padres. O'Hearn was able to make his first All Star appearance in 2025. He did so off the back of 17 homers, 63 RBIs, and 803 OPS. There really isn't much to talk about badly about his 2025. But in his offseason where he gets mixed in with the names like Schwarber and Marcell Ozuna, you kind of forget about him as that third sort of DH option. What he offers over those guys is he actually can play the field. Stick him in the corner outfield, stick him at first base. It's not going to be the most putrid thing you've ever seen. And this year he improved mightily in his platoon statistics. Traditionally, he is more of a platoon bat, but in 2025, he was actually better against left-handers than he was against righties, which was a major step in the right direction for the bat. If he can get to the right situation, it would definitely be a very good value signing. The second player on the list is Miguel Andujar, who I never thought I'd be talking about in 2025, but here we are. He had a great year in 2025. He had an 822 OPS. He hit 10 bombs, 44 RBIs. His stint in Cincinnati to finish the year was even better, had a 944 OPS in that time. He has an interesting skill set in the field. Range wise, he's not great. He's not going to be good on the dirt either. I'd like to see him try his hand in right field. He has a good arm, limited range, kind of fits the profile for the position. And if you can get him in a good situation with the bat, he can definitely provide his value. The third player on the list today is Raisel Iglesias, who had a 2.35 ERA in his time in Atlanta over the last 3.5 years. Iglesias doesn't really get thrown into that mix of elite relievers that we're talking about this offseason. Whenever you're talking about shooting bail for a guy like Ryan Helsley, shooting bail for a guy like Devin Williams, I definitely think Raisel Iglesias should be right there with him because during that stint with the Braves, he's been very, very consistent. The strikeout numbers aren't there of like an elite reliever, but at the same time, he's keeping the ball in the yard. Hits aren't necessarily a problem. He's just doing a very good job as a reliever, and there's nothing that you can really take away from him over that time. I think he definitely deserves to have a good contract this offseason, and he's going to provide his value wherever he goes. Refsnyder is one of my favorite players on lists like this because you get to the end of the season and you're like, wow, he has an 838 OPS. And that's exactly what Refsnyder's done over the last couple of seasons now. He just absolutely crushes left-handed pitching from his platoon role. You put him in a stadium that has a short left field because he pulls the ball in the air pretty well. You get him in like a Cincinnati, a Boston. He is just absolutely incredible. I love what his profile brings, and as a platoon bat, he's great. I wouldn't mind seeing a team try to run him every day, but definitely as a platoon bat, he's going to keep his value in tenfold. The fifth player on today's list is Mike Yastrzemski, the outfielder who finished the year in Kansas City. He actually had a great time in Kansas City, which is kind of weird considering how his swing is built. He's built to pull the ball in the air, and realistically, Kauffman Stadium isn't the best to do that for left-handed hitters. Leave that as it may. He was great in the second half of the year, really showed off why he still has some of that in the tank. He also plays a pretty good right field, doesn't have much range, so you don't really want to move him around too much, but he did pretty good in right field. I'd be interested to see a team try to platoon with him because he really struggled against left-handed pitching this past season, and he does much better against right-handed pitching. I would definitely like to see him find a nice home, has a nice short porch in right field, maybe also in a platoon, and then all of a sudden he becomes really, really valuable. The sixth player on today's list is Zack Littell. I had to get a starting pitcher somewhere in here just because there is a pretty deep class. Zack Littell provides a very interesting skill set because aside from him getting a lot of chase and not very many walks, he really doesn't do a whole lot very well. He gets ground balls at a pretty mediocre rate, keeps the hard hit pretty mediocre, but he gives up a ton of home runs. The hits aren't necessarily anything to brag about either. He did suffer a little bit from playing in Tampa Bay as well as Cincinnati this year. Both of those stadiums were just letting homers fly out the yard like crazy, and it's definitely a situation where I think he could go to a stadium that doesn't necessarily see the long ball fly as much. He could definitely post results similar to what he did this past season, which was the best season of his career where he had a 3.81 ERA across 32 starts and 186 innings. I'd take that any day of the week from a middle, starting option. The seventh name on the list is Danny Jansen, who's not going to necessarily wow anybody at any point in his career, but he is very valuable and definitely overlooked within this catcher class. Everyone's quick to turn to JT Realmuto as the de facto number one, and I think Danny Jansen actually is the catcher number one in this free agency class. Again, he's not a super wowing player, but he does some things very well. He is incredible at blocking. He's probably one of the best, if not the best blocker in the game. The rest of the defensive game, it's pretty much not there. We won't talk about it, but he does an incredible job at pulling the ball in the air. He's one of the most extremists in that category. He is up there with the top of anybody in the game. And I think if he gets in the right situation, all of a sudden you have a guy that can play pretty good defense at one aspect at least, and then also slug. That's really valuable coming from the catcher spot. And I think that could ultimately be the catcher number one out of this, out of this class if Real Muto continues to slip. Another reliever that had a rough 2025 was Kirby Yates, who finished the year with a 5.23 ERA. But I think if we're shooting bail to a lot of these other relievers like Helsley, like a Devin Williams, I think we have to also loop Yates into that category. He strikes out a ton of batters. The walks aren't necessarily a huge problem. He just gave up a ton more homers and hits compared to where he had been previously. Those numbers were unprecedented for where he's been previously in his career. The home runs, he hasn't given up that many home runs over a full season since 2015. The hits were also really up there for where he's at traditionally. I just don't think that's replicable into 2026. Now, will he be at a 1.17 ERA? I doubt that, but I think he'll bounce back. I definitely think it's within the question and could be a great signing for a lesser team. The ninth player on this list is Rhys Hoskins. Am I making this pick kind of because I put him into my players that I thought would rebound in 2025? Maybe a little, but here we are. I think he does some things well. I really do. He still has the bat speed and scored up percentage for it. He still has the sweet spot percentage. He pulls the ball in the air with the best of them. Like, he has all the traits that have of a guy that could outperform his expected numbers, and yet he's still yet to really hit the mark since he came back from injury. But I'm just going to bank on the fact that he pulls the ball in the air a lot. He hits it pretty well in terms of the sweet spot percentage, still has the bat speed for it. He walks a ton. Strikeouts are up there, but you can live with that if he's banging the ball out of the park, and I think he will do that if he can find the right situation. And then to round out the list today, we have Emilio Pagan, who again is another reliever that doesn't really get lumped into those top relievers in the game, but I think is very valuable in what he brings to the table. Out of 2 of the last 3 seasons, he's had an ERA below 3. He's striking out consistently over 10 batters for 9 innings, keeps the walks in check. Had a few issues with the homers, but he's been playing in Cincinnati, so you can expect that to happen. But in 2025, the hits were just non-existent against him. How replicable that is, I'm not quite sure, but he's just really good. He's just really solid reliever, especially whenever he's on his game. And it was a large reason why that Cincinnati Reds bullpen was reliable, especially once they got to the back end of it. And that's going to do it for the video. Let me know who you think is a criminally underrated free agent in this class. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and have a wonderful day.